online brand has its servers pulled or is discontinued from digital stores, it could be gone forever. Although certain shooters, role-players or battle royales might still function offline, it's a real kick in the teeth when the servers close shop, especially if the property had a passionate online community. Side trees on this list may have been popular in their day and developed a devoted fan base, but that didn't stop Sony from shutting them down for good. I'm Sai, this is WhatCulture, and these are 10 PlayStation games Sony killed. Number 10. SOCOM Confrontation. A development team should be really confident in a recognised IP before deciding to switch things up and turn a mainstream entry into an online multiplayer-focused game. And since SOCOM Confrontation was the first instalment in the military series that wouldn't contain a single-player campaign, this decision was risky. Having said that, Slant 6 Games' franchise was impressively consistent to this point, so this new direction had potential, but due to technical issues, constant lag, and game crashing bugs, this PS3 tactical shooter was a major misfire. Also, SOCOM Confrontation is an awkward name to say out loud, so it probably didn't help. Title aside, many actual gameplay issues were resolved over time, but Confrontation never redeemed itself due to lack of maps, graphical limitations, and unambitious gameplay. Sitting with a score of 63% on Metacritic, the underwhelming multiplayer title is the lowest rated SOCOM of them all. A mere 3 years after launch, Confrontation servers were put to rest. The online services for the follow-up, SOCOM 4, came to a close on the same day. The reason why Confrontation ranks so low on this list is because it's technically still possible to play it. In 2001, die-hard fans reverse-engineered the servers for the defunct online game, and using a private connection, Confrontation found a way to live on, no thanks to Sony. That said, the aforementioned SOCOM 4 from 2011, which fared really no better, remains the last game in this now buried franchise. Number 9. The Legend of Kora. After the success of Avatar: The Last Airbender, a sequel was commissioned by Nickelodeon called The Legend of Kora. When this follow-up was a smash hit, Activision published a beat-em-up based on the beloved cartoon, with Platinum Games serving as the lead development team. Since the studio had worked on innovative combat games like the Bayonetta series and Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, the cel-shaded fighting property appeared to be in safe hands. But due to uninspired combat, empty levels, and a lack of enemy variety, especially in the bosses, Legend of Kora felt like the laziest of lazy tie-ins. With the rampant bugs, this train wreck could easily be mistaken as a barely functioning beta. And after how awful M. Night Shyamalan's Last Airbender film adaptation turned out, you'd think that the fanbase had suffered enough. Thanks to the abysmal reviews, the digital-only title sold extremely poorly, and since it failed to make much money, Activision weren't keen on continuing to pay the licensing fees. As a result, Legend of Kora became digitally unavailable 3 years after release. Since it never received a physical release, it's been impossible to buy since. Considering how adored the animated series is, it doesn't really matter that the game's bad. There are people out there that want to own a copy, and that's just not possible anymore. Number 8. Swords of Gargantua. On paper, virtual reality should work well with a game like Swords of Gargantua. The self-proclaimed sword combat simulator has the hero using their oversized blade to slash enemies and deflect attacks. If the slicing and dicing mechanics were executed correctly, Third Wave Sword Fighter could have been a phenomenon. Too bad then that this PSVR title is a steaming pile of doo-doo. No matter how skilled a player is, there's nothing you can do to combat the clunky controls and inconsistent movement. Since the gameplay doesn't always register a parry or a jab, the player's best bet is to flail around aimlessly, hoping to hit something in the game, not in your front room. Sadly, there's no hope of these issues being patched as the PS4 version was delisted after a 2-year run. 3 months later, the servers went kaput. Since the multiplayer and single player require internet access, this decision rendered the Sony port of Swords unplayable. Yes, it's still available on Steam, but the PS4 version has gone the way of the dodo, which is appropriate because, as I said, it was doo-doo. No official reason was given behind this sudden decision, but it doesn't seem likely that Swords of Gargantua will be available on a Sony system anytime soon. Number 7. Noi Noby Boy. After the success of the Katamari series, Kaeta Takahashi released a similarly whimsical game called Noi Noby Boy in 2009. In each level, an elastic worm creature called Boy must twirl its body at certain angles to stretch out as much as possible. And no, Kratos didn't name the character, it's genuinely called Boy, and the more Boy expands, the more points he's awarded, allowing him to unlock new areas. Much like Katamari, the PS3 title is incredibly addictive despite its simplistic and pretty silly premise. surface. Although there's no real goal, finding elaborate ways to make the wiggly hero expand is deeply satisfying. Even though modern gamers would have a blast with Noi Noby Boy today, and I mean just look at it, it's absurd, it would just blow up on social media, obtaining this gem nowadays is a bit problematic since it was taken off the PlayStation Store in 2018, meaning you can't get your hands on Noi Noby Boy unless you already purchased it. Look, playing devil's advocate here, it's understandable when companies like Sony shut down the servers of lesser-known IP that came out over a decade ago, but Noi Noby Boy comes from a fairly prominent and respected developer, and you can't help but think that it had its legs, not that worms have legs, cut out from underneath it. Number 6. Gran Turismo HD Concept. As the title suggests, Gran Turismo HD Concept served as a sneak preview for the upcoming PS3 racing simulator Gran Turismo HD. Despite minimal content, Polyphony Digital's free advertiser showcased enough material to build anticipation for the real deal. Less than a year after Concept's release, head director Kazunori Yamauchi decided to go in a different direction, which led to the creation of Gran Turismo 5 Prologue, a demo for a new sequel called surprise, surprise, Gran Turismo 5. Though GT HD Concept only contained one track and 10 playable vehicles, GT5 Prologue boasted 70 cars, 6 tracks, and 50 events. Since Prologue offered smoother gameplay and better physics, it was clearly the superior of the two. And so for this reason, it wasn't long before GT HD Concept was purged from the PlayStation Store, effectively replaced by GT5 Prologue. Even though it was a shame the original version never came to be, it was the right decision. After all, many ideas planned for Gran Turismo HD, including noticeable car damage and online racing, were incorporated into Gran Turismo 5. Nevertheless, it would have been nice if Gran Turismo HD Concept was still downloadable purely for the sake of nostalgia and as an artifact of Gran Turismo's history. Number 5. Dust 514. It's hard to comprehend how awe-inspiring EVE Online was when it debuted back in 2003. The persistent world MMORPG is renowned for its complexity, range of gameplay and player interaction, as well as its gargantuan scale. After all, the spacefaring roleplayer contains nearly 8,000 star systems. Just when it looked like CCP games couldn't get more ambitious with it, they created a multiplayer spin-off called Dust 514, which tied to EVE Online in a unique way. Rather than existing separately, interactions in one game had consequences in the other, whether it be political, social, or environmental. To build hype to the absolute max, Dust 514 was totally free. How could anyone not be excited for this potential game changer? Though the customization and player interaction was awesome, this PS3 title was let down by atrocious graphics, glitches around every turn, and a heavy focus on grinding. Oh, there goes my excitement. Even if Dust 514 was a triumph, it was fighting an uphill battle from the beginning since it was released 6 months before the PlayStation 4 as well. With Sony fans flocking to the next-gen console, interest in the cosmic spin-off dried up quickly, and Dust 514 closed its doors in 2016. Despite the fact that EVE Online is still going strong after 2 decades, its offshoot failed to last 3 years. Number 4. Punisher No Mercy. Best known for making pinball games, Zen Studios partnered with Marvel in 2009 to develop an arena-based shooter called Punisher No Mercy. And it would be easy to bag on this game. It is bad. I mean, it's really bad. In fact, it's so bad that it's not really anything. In fact, it's nothing. There is basically nothing in this game. It almost doesn't exist with how slight in content it is. Seriously, the story mode is composed of 4 matches. Seriously, 4. The multiplayer has a couple of options, but it's not engaging enough due to the empty levels and minimal weapons, of which players can only carry 3 at a time. Worst of all, the dull FPS doesn't try to have any fun with the Marvel brand, to the point where it's easy to forget that this is a Punisher game. Due to the poor reception, nobody would have blamed the powers that be if they closed the servers down, but since the Marvel licensing with Zen Studios was set to expire just a couple years after the release, it was wisely decided to put this trash out of its misery. In early 2011, the comic book dud was taken off the PlayStation Store less than 2 years after its debut. Although there is often understandably outcry when a game is killed off for good, even the biggest of Marvel fans didn't notice or care when Punisher No Mercy was taken out back and executed. Number 3. Drive Club. Pushing the technological boundaries with its flawless car renders, Evolution Studios' Drive Club looked like it was set to be something truly special. Considering each car was composed of 260,000 polygons and took 7 months to develop, it probably would have been easier if the developers manufactured actual automobiles. Thanks to all the buzz, the racing simulator was among the best-selling games on the PlayStation 4, shipping 2 million units. However, Drive Club was met with heavy criticism due to its poor online capabilities, inconsistent AI, and lackluster gameplay. gameplay. Creators tried to make up for it with a bunch of patches, and they threw in additional features at no extra charge, including an innovative weather system that factors in cloud formations and movements of trees and grass. But unfortunately, the bumpy start cost Drive Club dearly since it didn't bring in enough cash to turn much of a profit. When Evolution Studios shut down in 2016, the updates of course came to a grinding halt, signalling the beginning of the end. And sure enough, the online servers for Drive Club VR, and Drive Club Bikes were switched off soon after. Although the single player functioned fine, it wasn't the same, and the future of this burgeoning series was snuffed out. Number 2. MAG. Before its release in 2010, MAG looked like it was going to have a long and prosperous future. Zipper Studios' MMO military shooter was the first game to maintain 256 players simultaneously, which was the world record at the time. Each 8-player squad was overseen by a leader who was selected if their rank was high enough. This mechanic incentivized players to be extra diligent during their playthrough so that they could be promoted to team leader later. Since the missions involved airstrikes, parachuting, tanks and planes, the gameplay had a tremendous amount of variety, and with the well-structured skill tree, vast customization, and a plethora of diverse modes, MAG was a wonder to behold. Yes, it suffered from a few glitches and janky animations, but it wasn't enough to ruin the entire experience. With a couple more patches, MAG really could have been epic. However, everything went belly up when Sony unceremoniously shut down Zipper Studios in 2012 due to, quote, resource realignment. Yay, capitalism! When the developers went bust, it was no surprise when the servers were turned off less than 2 years later. MAG may not have been perfect, but it deserved a much longer run. And number 1, of course, PT. 10 years later, and this one still stings. 10 years? Jesus Christ. With Hideo Kojima working alongside Oscar-winning director Guillermo del Toro, PT was set up to be truly groundbreaking. Despite only being 20 minutes long, the horror experience was lavished with praise due to its eerie atmosphere, disturbing imagery, and photorealistic graphics. And when the ending revealed PT was a playable teaser for an upcoming Silent Hill project starring Norman Reedus, it couldn't come out soon enough. Although drastic changes in gaming development are nothing new, what came next was truly heartbreaking. After Kojima and his senior staff parted from Konami, the PT follow-up Silent Hills was cancelled. Just to throw an ocean's worth of salt into the wound, PT was withdrawn from the PlayStation Store 3 days later, a decision that was regarded rightfully as spiteful, unprofessional, and cowardly. It caused such an uproar that several gamers rebuilt PT from scratch or ported it onto other systems, but due to legal issues, these recreations were rendered unplayable. Many of the games on this list deserved so much better, but PT is in a universe of its own in terms of its influence on the gaming industry, with many horror games taking a nod from an unfinished project, no less. And one, of course, that you can't play unless you spend a lot of money on a PlayStation 4 on eBay that still has it installed. Oh, isn't that great? Thanks, Konami.